As the U.S. presidential primaries continue, it's becoming more and more unclear who will be nominated for the two parties and who will eventually become president. Israelis are actively tracking the elections, since the U.S. president will have a big impact on Israel. If you're having trouble figuring out which candidate really supports Israel, we might be able to help. Dr. Chaim Weizmann is a lecturer at the IDC and Tel Aviv University, and he's an expert in public administration and policy. He's here to talk with us about the elections and what they could mean for Israel. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So what role do you think Israel's playing in the elections?
For Israel, it's so important that you cannot exaggerate in it. And for Israel, the most important thing is to know what's ahead. So the president that is more predictable is the best for Israel, because you know how to manage, you know how to make your moves, if you know how the president is going to react. And if we look at the four candidates at the moment, there are two candidates that are less predictable than others. I refer to Mr. Trump and Mr. Sanders. Both had some glitches in their speeches. Not that I am very impressed by electoral campaigns' promises or by electoral campaign speeches, but if you have a glitch, it means it is more sincere. And since both these candidates had some glitches, and I'm not sure they are predictable. So if you want a Republican president, maybe the more predictable is Mr. Cruz. If you are inclining more to the Democrats, the more predictable is Hillary Clinton.
Now, you mentioned that Bernie Sanders has proven himself a little bit unpredictable. I actually want to ask you a bit about him. I know he recently really inflated the number of Palestinians that were killed in Operation Protective Edge. What do you think that means? What does that say about him, his understanding of the conflict?
The problem is my fears about his understanding of global politics.
So not just Israel, just in general about the globe?
Just in general. And the President of the United States is the leader of the free world. I want him to be the leader. I want the leader of the free world to know what he's talking about and to be sure that we are in good hands. I'm not sure about Mr. Sanders, and made me a little bit worried about it. Then we have to remember that things that are said before the elections are not things that are done after the elections. We all remember the promises to move the American embassy to Jerusalem, for example. And we all remember, let's take the last two presidents. Okay, Mr. Obama was considered not a very good friend of Israel. On the other hand, this is the president who gave Israel more than, in security terms, more than any other president before him. And then let's look at Mr. Bush, Mr. George W. Bush, who was a very friendly to Israel, a great friend of Israel. But then we have Hamas in power because he insisted on having elections in the Palestinian Authority. So, who knows?
Hard to say.
Very hard to say.
So of the four candidates that are currently in the race, who do you think, you already said someone who's stable is the best for Israel, but who do you think would be the best for Israel of those four, just based on what they've said up until now?
If you incline to support Republicans, I believe Mr. Cruz is more stable. If you incline to support Democrats, I think Hillary Clinton is much more experienced, much more time in the business.
Sure.
I'm not sure that she is much more time, but she looks like she is much more time in the business. This is Mr. Sanders' claim to fame and her problem in the campaign right now. But I think she's more stable and more reliable for Israel.
Now, on that note of time in the business, I wanted to ask you, it seems like here in Israel, we always find a new political hero at election time, someone that kind of comes from the outside and is suddenly a candidate that everyone loves. Do you think that's happening right now in the U.S. as well?
Exactly. This is exactly what is happening in the United States. Mr. Trump and Mr. Sanders are both two sides of the same coin. I mean, both are supported by people who are sick and tired of the existing system, of the political of Washington, as they used to say, and they get the support. Don't forget, all presidents since Jimmy Carter made their career on bashing Washington. Now, Hillary Clinton cannot bash Washington. She is Washington. And she is perceived as she is Washington. So for the young people who are not happy with the system, who are rebels because of being young and so on and so forth, they tend to support Mr. Sanders. And people on the right wing, low-income white people who think that somebody is stealing their America, they support Donald Trump because he is an outsider. The problem is in the American system because the winner takes all. So if you support somebody who doesn't win, you remain without representation. In Israel, we also have this kind of new hero every elections. But since it's a proportional representation,
Sure, not winner take all.
not the winner takes all. It's not first past the post, but proportional. So Mr. Kahlon, with 8%, got 10 seats in the Knesset, and he is the key for the coalition. And so they have a representation. Then they are disappointed with the new hero, and they are looking for a new hero. But since 1965, I think, we always have a new party, a new hero. And sometimes it's a very old hero. Like in 1965, it was Mr. Ben-Gurion with his Rafi party, similar to Mr. Sanders, okay? And he got the support of, again, more than 8% of the population, and he had, his party, Rafi, had 10 seats in the Knesset. So it's similar, but the system, the characteristic of the system makes it different.
Definitely. Well, thank you. You've given us so much to think about, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.